Hi, ladies. Welcome to another Encouraging Women podcast for enjoying your children. Let me first say hello to my guests, Erin and Adina, before I am going to tell you about our wonderful topic for today. So, first, say hello to Erin and Adina.
Thank you for having us. I'm really excited. I wasn't sure if I was up to it, having had a very big birthday. I was exhausted, but as soon as I saw what both of you added in our little pre-conversation, I got all ignited and I thought, we've got to discuss this. So I'm very excited to be here.
Yes. Hi, Adina.
Hi, ladies. I'm also very excited to be here. I think this is a very exciting topic and something that a lot of uh,
Mm.
Mm.
ladies with shared custody struggle with or
Yes,
have
yes.
questions about.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have questions too. I'm going to be asking my husband because I really don't know. And I have extended family members, they're going through this. They don't always share with me because
Mm.
they don't want I don't know, my
Mm.
ministry
Yeah.
answer. They just want it from someone real. But I'm getting more real, realizing it's the real world and everything doesn't quite go, but I can still share wisdom after 7 decades. And I've had my best friend for 62 years. Is that right? 63 years,
Wow.
63 years, because I was seven.
Wow.
Yes. And I start my mornings with the thankfulness therapy because one of our ministers is going through a really tough time. So I said, I'm going to do that. And then I'm trying to team with a teen. So I've actually got three teenage granddaughters. So I
Mm.
started with the one. She was tried to be excited. Then then I brought in the other teen, her cousin, and we play video games together. So I planted that and it just died. It's just nothing. I didn't hear a thing from either one of them. So I'm not sure. Should I water it? What should I do? Should I grab another teen? There's one that's older. So I'll always have a teen. I just figured once I have these teens will go for another 6 years. I'll have a teen. And then the next one's coming up. And then the next one. And then I have babies, three babies. So I'll have teens until the day I die. So I'll be good. So I'll definitely have teen girls for who knows how long. And then my niece, who she calls me a mom in Japan, she says she wants a honeymoon baby. So she's getting married next month. And she said she wants a
Mhm.
honeymoon baby. And she said, you have to tell me everything. So there could be a new podcast coming, sharing
Yes.
everything. I said, like what? And I said, okay, I'm going to share something. And it's coming from Grammy because, of course, that's
Mm.
her grandmother. And I said, love. Make sure they feel loved. And then I shared about love covers a multitude of sins and love
Mm.
never fails. And then I compared it to two grandmothers. One was very efficient and just a really good, which people would think, she was fit and everything. But my mother, she didn't have all those things, but she loved her children and her grandchildren. And that's the one that they talk about all the time.
Mm.
And it means the most. And so I want to be like my mother and be that kind of mother. But starting out as a mother like that, not just a grandmother. And I kind of did it, but not to the extent in that being it, focusing now and especially encouraging other mothers to just
Mm.
be very loving. And I don't think we get that in the church sometimes. They're trying to
Yeah.
make sure they do everything right. And I think about that, how all these things that seem so important, then later on you grow up and you see, well, that was foolish, right? You go through these phases or you're being part of a church, which is what we're going to start with is
Yes.
sharing custody. So I can be quiet and let you move right into there.
Yeah. So, ladies, I'm hoping that we've excited you now, so that you're ready for what we want to talk about. And we want to talk about sharing custody and double blessings versus dividing in half. And now this may seem to you, what? What's going on? What are we talking about? And I'm going to give over to Erin because I wanted to explain to you first what was what was behind us
Mm.
starting this discussion, something that I never even thought we would be discussing on the podcast until we came up with, Erin came up with this and came to us, and I was like, wow. And then I heard Adina's story, and ladies, you have to
Mm.
hold on to that one as
Yes.
well. So please,
Yes.
Erin, if you,
Yes.
yes,
Yes. And
please.
I didn't comment on that because I want to hear it. And
Mhm,
then I'm going to comment here because
mhm.
I love that.
Yes.
Well, this all came about because for my birthday, I got lots of messages from ministry friends
Mhm,
and children and my children and grandchildren. I got messages. And one of them, we talked for almost 2 hours. And during this conversation, she was talking, she's divorced, she has shared custody. I'm pretty sure they take turns. They have
mhm,
teens, a couple boys and a girl, I think, and they share custody. And so it's 1 week here, 1 week here. So she was telling how frustrated she was and the way she was describing how she presented it, I doubt it was that calm. Anyway,
mhm.
when we as mothers were like, no, 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 this is so important, especially when it comes to our children's spiritual growth
Yes.
and things is very important to us. So it's a really it can become heated and very like we have to have our way. But so she was saying that her ex-husband or their father takes the children to this church that I think she said it was dead or I don't know. It just didn't go along. It wasn't challenging to her boys and she was trying to convince him, but he comes from a pretty religious background. It wasn't Catholic, but just kind of a offshoot of that, right? So it's a lot more religious. Anyway, so and then she said, I wanted him to come to this church and telling me how great it was and all this. So as she was talking, I was talking to my husband to ask him, give me some wisdom because I don't
Mm,
know. Is there any, and should I share anything? So something came to mind, but I thought, I don't think she's going to be receptive. But the first thing he had me do is listen all the way to the end. Can you imagine that? Me listening to the very end.
Mm.
So I did until she exhausted the whole thing. And I was getting in on her. I think I even remember, I don't know if this is true, but at one point she called him like she was mad at her ex. And I said, what a jerk. And I thought, did I say that? I'm encouraging women. What is that? But what it did is it brought down her walls like she is real, right? So
Mm.
anyway, we just went on and I'm repenting of that. You can pray for me, right? Confess your faults. So I did anyway, but I wanted her to know I get it, right? So then I said, I just want to ask you something. I've never thought of this before. So what do you think why is it that you both have to go to the same church? Why can't your children be doubly blessed by going to two different churches? If he's this and it's much more formal, don't you think
mm,
your children will have the opportunity to say, wait a minute, I kind of like this, or my dad's missing this. And also because they're teens, if they don't
mm,
talk to you and instead they talk directly to their father and say, well, Dad, and that sort of thing, and opening that up, it's going to help them to have a better relationship. And I said, I think your children could end up coming away much more spiritually mature and much more spiritually aware, well ahead. And instead of it being a negative where these children are divided in half and this whole icky stuff, because who wants to come and you're sitting with
mm,
this. Now I'm sitting with my mom over here, and then my dad's over. It's just awful.
mm,
It's exactly the way the enemy wants to destroy. But why can't children who are going through this, because we seek his wisdom, actually are doubly blessed rather than being divided in half and just destroyed? I think it was that. And surprisingly, she said, I never thought of that. I think that would be really good. I think this would really work. So I said, I'm going to bring it up on a podcast. Would you follow up with me and tell me how it works? Good, bad, ugly.
mm,
Just let me
mm.
know. I said, maybe we can talk in a couple of weeks and just tell me how it went and what did the kids think and how did it go down. So it could have just be, it could just implode. I have no idea, or explode. I
Mm,
have no idea. But we'll just see what happens. But
mm,
and then I said, I'm going to actually share it with the two of you because
mm,
you both have shared custody and see what kind of input. And I said that I would be sharing that with her as well. So now
mm,
I have put that in. It's nothing I did, but just I think
mm.
wisdom. I think it's definitely wisdom
Yeah.
from above. So I'll leave it
Mm.
both to you to comment.
Yeah, so when you left that voice note, I was thinking, it has been a while now that the children are attending a church with their dad every second Sunday. And it's never really bothered me that much, but it's not, there's nothing wrong with the church, right? I don't want to slander the church or anything like that. It's just like a stiff type of church where they encourage the maybe the worshiping of God, and so like that. And it's like, I think Adina mentioned something like him sitting on his throne waiting to for you to do something wrong. It just gives that type of experience, and I never wanted the children to have that experience with church. And I've often wondered, if it would hurt them along the way to be in a church like that. But like I said as well, it's nice to for them to be in a house here where they can see us having a relationship, right? So that's the blessing that comes with it. But I've often wondered about it, and I've often wondered, if it would be good for my children to have another experience so they could see the different sides of what it would be like. So I have thought about it, and it was very interesting when you mentioned it, because I didn't really know that people would be thinking about that. But in custody, it would be something that would come up
And it
in
could
a lot of
become a
households.
real battle. And
Yes,
why?
it can.
And it's
Yes,
not two that
because
just means be agreeable and go that way. And now I have to take them there. But I did want to share a couple things since you're talking about
Mm,
non-church. Can we talk
mm,
about that too and kind of bring that in before we just move on? Because
yes.
I remembered back, I was thinking I didn't have, but I was, when my youngest ones
Mm,
were their dad left, and then it was it wasn't shared custody. I had
mm,
sole custody, but he wanted me to take them to a church. And I think I shared that somewhere and explaining what it was. And this is where you come together, and it is a way of um, but don't, this is just one way. It's like God, the King, the Father, your Father is this person that everybody comes to and bows down to. And that's really what goes on in the church more than that
mm,
relationship. But I said, but don't forget when you're home, it's like your dad wouldn't want you to be that formal with them.
mm,
That would be sad. Instead, you'd want to come and jump in his lap and hug him and kiss
mm,
him and talk to him and share, and he becomes your father in that way, a very close father. So it was that. And then I wanted to bring in, because uh my one granddaughter here, they've been looking for a church for fellowship, for like-minded, you see. And that's
mm,
what most of my children don't go there to be spiritually fed in their church. They go there to find like-minded. It's for
mm.
fellowship. And I think
Yes.
that's really a lot more of what the church was intended to be,
Mm,
not
mm,
like another, it was the temple, which was one thing, Old Testament. And then it became more of fellowshipping together with like-minded. We look in the early
mm,
church, but that's where she goes, and she's trying to find the homeschool girls and the ones that don't, they're not into social media, that sort of thing. But I think a lot for fellowship, finding like-minded girls. Now you have other means because you do go to the homeschool groups and things, but that's another thing about churches too, not just the spiritual. But anyway,
mm.
I just thought before we jump on that, is there anybody want to say anything about the non-church or about using it for a fellowship and finding like-minded?
Yes, that's exactly what, it was in my mind before we found the homeschool groups.
Mm,
It was in my mind, where will my children be finding
hmm
like-minded children, and I did
hmm
think that church would be an
Yes.
option. But, most of the churches in our here where we are doesn't really have young people anymore, which is sad.
Yes.
Yes, but so it didn't really work out the way I wanted it to work out. But it worked out the way he wanted it to work out, right? Because then the homeschool group took off, and my children met all of these other children. So it
Yeah.
wasn't his time to start with,
Yeah, yeah.
and I
So
guess that's
but for
probably
some
most
that
important.
don't homeschool and then they
Yes.
want to do the church, that is a good reason for
Mm.
finding and
Fellowship.
visiting churches. I'm just going to throw into, we used to church hop all the time when I was my former husband. He loved different churches. Their family grew up like that, whatever church, jump, 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 jump. And
Mm.
I got to do multitude, I mean, just about every denomination there is, jump, 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 jump. But I liked it. And when we were just church hopping or visiting, they're super nice. Once you join, they're not as nice. So I say keep hopping until you find, and then you just start picking up your the like-minded people you
Mm.
meet there, right? And
Mm.
then have a
Mm.
hand selected. So that's what I've been telling my granddaughter. If even if you don't like the church, if you find somebody, then just, and she goes, that's exactly what I'm doing, Mimi. That's exactly. I'm finding friends everywhere. So anyway,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I
That's
would, Adina hasn't spoken, so I'll be quiet and
yes.
give her a chance to
Enough.
share maybe this, anything that we've shared here, or do you want to go on to your
Mm.
other thing?
Yeah, I just want to mention in my case, because I still haven't found like a group for my children. I have been talking to uh, the Lord about, should I just take them to for
Mm.
fellowship and to make friends, but so far he hasn't led me to
Mm.
um I'm yeah, he hasn't led me to
To take them
go
to a
that route.
church. Just so you know, because
Yeah.
he had me
Mm.
leave church, and I wanted to
Mm.
comply
Mm,
because we were still married, and he was
mm,
he was still, so I had in that way. But I said, well, I don't want to attend church, but I'll definitely bring the children. And it was a church that
Mm.
they were familiar with. It wasn't just a brand new one or anything like
Mm.
that. But they were able to, because you drop children off on all sorts of things. So that's another
Mm.
option for mothers. Ultimately, it's
Mm.
just talking to your husband, their father, and say, what do you want for them? That ultimately, it always needs to come back to that, because we can have all kinds of great ideas and talk to people, but what does he want? It's a good thing. It's nice to talk,
Mm.
but I think ultimately, never forget that's who you want to ask, and he may show you, well, he always does with
Mm.
me, totally the opposite of the way I was thinking, always.
Yeah,
So that would be
definitely.
important. And you're right. And sometimes it won't work out, and it can be totally different, or it comes in a different way, but he's got
Mm.
their best interest at
mm,
heart above
Mm.
ours. So
Yes, definitely. And I also think that it's just asking him, and that he will show us where
mm,
we need to go, what we need to do, and how we can find fellowship in our, community where we are. Because for me, it was also important to have fellowship in the community. And I heard about our, now I still can't remember the word in English, welfare, I think welfare
mm,
group. And so I joined the welfare group. And as I'm working with these different women, because it's mostly women that, does these things. And as I'm working with these women, I see them from all different denominations and churches. And, so they're a bit weird with me, when they hear that I don't attend church, but they are from different churches around our, where we live. And it's nice to fellowship with them and come together once a month to do this. And I enjoy it very much. And yes, so
again,
that was one.
there's a multiplying blessings because you're in that. And I don't think the word is welfare, just so you know.
I don't know what the
Welfare
word is.
here is usually people who are, well, they say married to the
Yeah.
government. They're on government
No, it's not that.
subsidies. They're impoverished is welfare here in the United States. So it's not quite the right word, but you could say the word in Afrikaans because we love hearing that. So,
Yeah, so it's like where so what we do is they get donations in. I'm not part of that, but they get donations in and then they buy like a lot of groceries and once a month we get together and we pack it for certain households that doesn't have
oh, that is
um
then. Yeah, it is kind of that.
something
Yeah.
like
No, you're
that.
right then. Then I
We pack
understood it
in,
correctly.
but
You're
it
talking
doesn't.
about a welfare that one of the other ministers, a Spanish minister, she asked me about tithing on food stamps and things. And I said, well, I need to get back to you. So maybe I should just do a little clip here about that. Can I
Mhm.
do that? Can I just
Yes,
stick
please.
this in? With so many children and grandchildren, and a lot of them have phones. I don't have time for anything. So I just got to stick it where I have to stick it into. But so she said that, so this lady said, I want to start tithing. She really wants to, but she has no income, no money coming in. And she said, I thought you had mentioned something about that back when. And it was when I first was left with my 4 children. I had no income whatsoever, no money whatsoever was coming in. But my their dad said, you need to get on welfare, and very humbling, but I went ahead because I didn't want to go back to work and then my children would, like, they've lost both parents. So I decided I'd rather live impoverished. So went ahead with this, but we got food stamps now. And that means, well, what do? You can't give those. And even now they even have a card, so it wouldn't even work. But I just told the Lord, my husband at the time, what should I do? And instantly I thought of something. What we would do is when we first get them, we get them every month, like we get a new batch. That would first always do first fruits, do that, whether you have money or you have the other, pay your tithe. So we took it and we went to, it was a kind of a, well, they carried huge bags of like
Mm,
rice and beans in giant cans, like
mm,
industrial sized things. Like we couldn't lift it. It would take all the boys, we would all kind of try and lift it onto one of those flatbed, but we buy rice, beans, and and I didn't know what to buy, but I had worked in the soup kitchens before to feed the poor, and then big cans like I don't know. Anyway, it had fruits and vegetables and things, and we would bring all this up, and then we'd get it into the car. Sometimes a man would come by and help us get in the car, and then we'd go to the soup kitchen, and they would send the men out, and they would bring it in. And I have one very touching story where there was one man, and he was missing most of his teeth. He only had a couple that I could see. There was
mm,
pretty much blank in there. But he saw that and he was so excited about these peaches because they were soft, right? And they
mm,
were so tasty. And I said, would you like this? And I said, you could have this. And it was this giant candy. He said, yes. And I said, I will talk to the director so then he knows I gave this to you personally. This is for you. And so he was thrilled. And then from that one encounter, we ended up finding a family that I did another month. There was a little girl that was in our neighborhood, and my boys asked if she could come over for lunch, and she ate like she hadn't eaten in a long time. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's trouble here. And so I
mm,
asked if she could come grocery shopping with us, and we were going to go, and her mom said yes. So I just kind of asked her, oh, do you ever buy these? No, but I've always wanted to. Or we used to get those anyway. We filled a basket. My boys knew what we were doing. I said she's hungry, and she said I don't think she has much to eat, Mom. So we did all these groceries. We brought them back to the house, and I said we brought them in, and the mother just started crying when we came in. When we came in, we found out they had been living on top ramen, the noodles, ramen
mm.
noodles, for a
Oh, yes.
week. For a week.
Oh, wow.
That's all they had is one ramen noodles. and
Mm.
only God knew. So that was the tithe. And I think regularly we would get her groceries and stuff, but she didn't even have money for gas. So we were able to give her money for gas so she could get to work and make money. But you just never know. That is
Mm.
giving that back to God's people and things, and tithing on that. But the one was a church extension, so maybe that's more formal, but I think he more cares about the heart. So that's the testimony of tithing on
Mm.
on food stamps. And if there's another thing that you can't tithe on, just ask him and you'll come up with something just as
Mm.
spectacular and wonderful. So thank you. I hope that
Mm.
answers the
Yeah.
question on tithing, even if you're on food stamps.
Mm. Yes, so that's nice. That's a beautiful testimony. And I actually remember um, you mentioning that
Mm.
in the testimony. Yes, yes, that's
And even
beautiful.
my boys, even now, my daughter
Mm.
was quite young, but they remember, and it really impacted them.
Mm.
It really
Yeah.
did. And the one of my sons, he goes out all the time. His family has brought groceries. They buy groceries and bring them to families, just on his
Mm.
own. We donated a grill and they fed the homeless on the street. It was a portable
Mm.
grill. And I said, is there somebody who could use this? And he said, oh my gosh, they do these, they bring it out to the homeless group, but to have
Mm.
something hot to, so it would just gather crowds. And then they were able to share about the Lord with them and stuff. So you just being creative. I think there's a lot of churches and church do this, but I think as individuals and families,
Mm.
I think we could
Mm.
do a lot and really impact our children and give
Mm.
them something that they wouldn't get. And that's the freedom too when you're divorced and you have custody or shared custody, there's so much you can do with your children that, you know, if your husband who maybe wasn't a believer or not much of a believer or something that he wouldn't do, but you're free to do that. Take advantage of it. See it
Mm.
as the blessing that it is, right? Don't you think? Both you ladies would
Exactly.
attest to it, right? Those were when
Yes.
I was a single mom. Oh my gosh, if I only knew. Just
Mm.
it's wonderful. There was so much you
Yeah.
could do and put in your children. And when there's not a man around, it's surprising because that takes a lot of energy and not a time. Of course,
Mm.
there's the blessing of it, but you could take it and multiply it times 10 and do so much with your children. It can be, God can use it for good, like he says. All things work together for good. All right, I'm going to be quiet because I know that we
I
do want to get to the testimony that Adina has.
Yes, but I just want to totally agree with you that there's a lot of things that I've been doing with the children over the years that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was married, you know. And it's just lovely to be able to share with them, to be able to just in the house, you know,
Mm.
in my home, talk about the Lord at any time, you know, at any time be able to bring him up, which maybe I wouldn't have felt comfortable doing if there was a man in the house that wasn't a believer.
Mhm.
So that's definitely just one of the many benefits.
Mhm.
Dina, so I want you to share because, you know, when I read or when I listened to Aaron's story and I was thinking about my children going to this church because even my son is doing, I don't know, he needs to be accepted now in the church when you turn 18
Mhm.
or something like that. You know, it's
Mhm.
like a whole thing that needs to happen. So he's doing classes now in doing that. And at first I didn't want to agree to it, but then I thought, you know, it's not as if it could harm him. He comes home, he tells me what he's learned and all of that. So
So this
the
is what
information,
happens on when he's with his father.
yes, this is what
Okay, yeah,
happens
all
when
right,
you
sorry. And
older.
also
Yes,
we
I'm
should,
sorry.
because
Yes,
we've gotten off, I'm so sorry that I did that, but we're getting back to having the double blessing in
yes,
regard to the church
mm,
and
yes,
church upbringing and visiting churches, because we got way away. Just want to,
yeah,
it's my fault we went off. We're going to bring it back to that. So now you're talking about when you're sharing custody and over
yes,
there, this is what they do. So he's doing
yes,
this more very formal, kind of,
Exactly.
yes,
Yes,
interesting.
yes.
Okay, all right,
Yes,
now.
at first when they were like little, they had to be baptized in the church. So they do a little baptism or something for the
Mm.
children. And I didn't really agree with that, but I let it go at that stage. And then when my son did this, I'm like, now it seems like they're just getting too involved. And I thought that my situation was difficult, but then I heard Adina's situation. And I was like, no, it's fine. So, Adina, please share yours with us.
Hmm.
Okay, so my situation was I just want to go back to when I got married because I was in the church, Yvonne, that your children goes to now with their dad. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But my former husband was more, I think it's, do you call it Protestant?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So when we got married, I moved over with him to his church. So that's where my children was. It's not bad. What do you call it? They got they
Christened?
blessed him.
Oh,
Yes,
They
it's
blessing.
blessed
not
him.
Okay.
Like yeah.
baptized,
Yeah,
they just
sometimes
like
they
put
have
a
a
little water on
christening
their
versus a
christening. That's the word.
infant
That's the
baptism. Catholics have
word.
infant baptisms. They think that
Mm,
if they believe if they're not baptized and they die, so if a
mm,
baby's sick in the hospital, they'll quickly baptize there because that's the
mm,
only way. And they
Mm,
have sponsors or godparents who answer for them, but rarely
mm,
mm,
do they do much of anything. But I'm a godmother to several of my children. And some of my early ones, I had godparents too, though they were never like not Catholic baptized, but I love them having godparents like that.
yes.
And I had christening gowns because I just liked the fashion of it. So I just
mm.
wanted that. So they all had those with the little ones. So anyway, but it just depends. There's so many denominations and so very
Yeah.
varied, but there's christening or dedicating. Yes, that's it.
So I think it's more
It's
like a
called
dedicating.
dedication. Yep,
Yeah.
Yes,
yep, yes,
yes.
yes.
So
Mm,
that is how my children grew up while we were still married. But then after we got divorced and when with my former husband and the other women, as I understood, they didn't go to a church because I never asked, but what I just understood is they couldn't find a church. And then, but I never knew about what was like really, the real situation. And then the first Christmas after I moved back to this town and regained custody, it was December and like we always do, we put up the Christmas tree, decorated the Christmas tree because it's the Christmas season. And one day my former husband came to fetch the children and he saw the Christmas tree because it's right in the front door
mm.
uh, where you walk in. And then he started to tell me that we shouldn't celebrate Christmas because it's pagan holiday and you know, all the reasons why we shouldn't do this, and especially not have a Christmas tree. And I was like totally, surprised because this was never an issue, and
Can I
me and the
ask you,
children,
obviously the children weren't there. He just said this to you. He didn't talk to them
no,
about
yeah, the children were here when he told me this.
the pagan holiday and so oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I just want to
And
you didn't write it down in your text, so I just wanted to see and set the record straight. Okay, this is interesting. Keep going. I'm enjoying this.
this, and and then he started to tell me, oh, I shouldn't teach the children about Santa Claus. And I said, but I don't. That's
Mhm.
not what,
Mhm.
for me, what Christmas is all about. So, but yeah,
I went
so,
through that crazy time too, like,
mm,
oh, it's not, and I didn't want him to get the credit. But when they were really little, we did the Santa and things. And then we kind of came to I think is a very good with Santa is nothing more than Chuck E. Cheese. Do you know? It's like
mm,
he's not,
Mm,
it's like, do you know who
mm.
the Chuck E. Cheese? It's just a character, but it's not like you
yeah.
can't go see him. It's not like you can't, but they're not thinking he's bringing the gifts or anything like that. It's a good compromise. It's not,
Mm,
yeah, it shouldn't ruffle anybody's feathers. Some would be very opposed to it, but it
mm,
usually appeases grandparents and that sort of thing. So
mm,
just
mm.
I thought I'd throw it in since we're talking about that.
But, but I still didn't know about, what was going on. And then later on, my children told me that they go with, I think, their stepmoms. I think sometimes my former husband was also with them, and they go to like these festivals. And at first, I didn't quite understand, and then they told me, there's like the cross, the David star,
Yeah,
and
Jewish festivals you wrote
yeah,
down.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Jewish festivals.
So
Yeah.
and then I came to understand that, okay, they are going to like the Hanukkah, celebrating all these Jewish festivals.
Hmm.
And at first, I was a little bit upset because I also didn't understand what it was all about. Also, well, I just have to add, I didn't, I just grew up the way Christian in
Mm,
Christian churches. I didn't have any knowledge about
Mm.
this. So I didn't make an issue of it. I didn't talk about my former husband about it. I just talked to the Lord about it because at first I was really, really, really upset about this because it's like two different worlds.
mm,
And the Lord just gave me peace about it. And it's like, why, you know, they, it, that maybe it's good for them to learn these things
mm,
because it's in the Old Testament. And that's what the way the Jewish people, the Messianic Jews, celebrate.
mm,
They still celebrate all these
mm,
festivals. So yeah, just I think it opened my mind as well to understand a bit more about
mm,
that the religion and their festivals and stuff as well. So for me, I just like I made peace with the fact I'm not sure if they even still do that and still go to that. They haven't talked to me about it again, but yeah, so that's my
I think the
story.
first thing that to draw out and to point out if they're not picking it up is that when you think something, before you talk to anybody about it, definitely don't
mm,
talk to your former husband or your mother. Don't talk to anybody because you're going to get everybody has a different opinion on it
Mm,
and how we feel. And even like I had taught my daughters because we're emotional beings, don't
mm,
when if there's emotion attached,
mm,
mostly
mm,
negative emotion, don't say anything until that emotion goes away. Then
mm-hmm,
speak
mm,
from your head. Don't speak
mm,
with that broken heart, that hurt heart, that here you just cause a mess. Just don't say
mm,
anything.
mm.
And
Yeah.
now more taking it to your husband or your best friend or the Lord, whoever he is, or your heavenly father. Talk to him. You're
Mm,
going to see things in a totally different way. But the most important thing is what you pointed out. You felt a peace. That's what we need, a
mm,
peace about, okay, it's all right. Then he opens our eyes. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, it's not so bad.
mm,
And my situation with being Christian, we grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, all of them. There
mm,
was only one other Catholic family. We were a Catholic family.
mhm,
The rest of them were all Jewish. I went to a school that was 97% Jewish. And then even my
mm,
Catholic school, we were just 2 blocks up from called Little Jerusalem, where they had the ones that have the curls going down the front
mm,
of that,
mm.
and we they have the best bakeries and the best delis. I'm telling you, the food there is just
mm,
out of this world. But they would practice different things, and my
Mm,
brother would laugh about how during the depression, I don't know why they collected bacon fat. Isn't that a weird thing? Why?
mm,
Anyway, but they would
mm,
always go to pick up like bacon fat at this one, and they were Jewish. And of course, they don't have bacon at the Jewish place, but they would always invite him in, and he'd have cookies and stuff. Do you have any bacon grease? Not today, honey. Come back, And he would laugh, and he'd say, "I didn't get it. They're Jewish. They're not going to have it." But I never remember going to any kind of a Hanukkah or something. I do know uh, they didn't have, they had blue lights on their house and they would have put up a Christmas tree, but it was usually white with blue lights, right? So
Yes.
they kind of did this thing, but we were the Catholic
Mm.
family with it. But I just love that you had that and being exposed to it and being able to talk to them about it and understanding
Mm.
it's a religion. Even like you mentioned, the Messianic Judaism, I mean, and
Mm.
a Messianic means that they believe in the Messiah. It means
Mm.
that
Yes.
they are born again. It's a different. So a Messianic. So
Mm.
they do believe that, but there's
Yes.
tradition. A religion, we do things religiously, right? We do things
Mm.
religiously. There's
Mm.
customs, there's traditions. Those aren't bad. It's just when they get in the way of or replace the relationship.
Mm.
That's all. I don't care. It doesn't matter what church you go to. Sometimes
Mm.
there's these beliefs that they're just a little askew. So I'd say go
Mm.
straight to the Bible, make sure the Bible says that 100%, not just this one that, oh, they say means this. If you want the
Mm.
truth, you can find that. So but the different festivals or the different Jewish, it's just a custom, right? Because even
Mm.
the Jewish, there's by blood, there's people who become Jew. You really,
Mm.
it's a
Mm.
bloodline, really. It is with that
Mm.
more than a religion. But I think coming away with everything is
Mm.
always go to listen, don't say anything. That's the first thing we
Mm.
know for the gentle and
Yes.
quiet spirit. Don't say anything, just listen. And like I found out this time, just let her talk her all the way. I would
Mm.
always want to jump in. Imagine that. But I do. But if he says, just be quiet, let it all the way, get on their side of it. And then you might be given wisdom if you're talking to, Lord in your head and in your heart, you may have
Mm.
something, or you just wait. And then, especially if you're really rattled, when everything has to do with our children, we easily get rattled. That's protective, it's in
Mm.
us, but it doesn't mean we have to react. I mean, we do in certain situations, we know we have to react quickly, but it's
Mm.
different when you're dealing with a father and shared custody or even if
Mm.
it's just some custody. I mean, they have a father and that father is very important to
Mm.
them and to try and make him the enemy or to your mess, it's a big mistake. There are some
Mm.
wonderful children that are raised with a single parent, and sometimes the father doesn't want anything to do with it. That's a different story altogether.
Mm.
Yeah.
But when
Mm.
it is a shared custody, if they can have that person in life, whatever level or whatever it is, it's to keep the peace. It says
Yeah.
Mm.
we're called to peace. And it doesn't mean that you just have to go along with everything, but get the wisdom. It says all wisdom comes from above. So, and
Mm.
that's when you might want to talk. Like I would talk to my father about things. Well, now that my father's been gone for so long, I have a
Mm.
heavenly father. And
Mm.
it's more of that. I need that older wisdom, the calmness, the peacefulness,
Mm.
I've got everything in control, right? If it's a different relationship. And also when dealing with your children or grandchildren, I think about that, like their father or their grandfather. What wisdom would he have in going to that person to help me through some of these things? And to not, it's instinctive to get rattled about it, but getting
Mm.
excited about that,
Mm.
these difficult situations, getting excited about everything. Just don't
Mm.
miss this opportunity. I love to get into messes now when I mess up. This is kind of getting
Mm.
because I think, so how are you going to get me out of this one? This is going to be fun. This is going to be interesting. Because and I love to say, there's no way. It's a mess. This is just hopeless. And then I'm like, oh, I would never have thought of that. That's
Mm.
incredible. And it's a
Mm.
great thing. It took me all these years. I just want to help fast track all of you that
Mm.
to get where I am, but don't take as many years, right? So anyway, just do it now. If I would definitely, I highly recommend 70. It's a great
Mm.
age. All these women are afraid to get older I don't
Uh,
want to be fearful of it. I want to be fascinated by everything and get excited about everything. So that's a whole other topic. I
and
don't know how we're doing on time or if
yeah,
there's more that needed to be
I,
taught, but I'm going to be quiet.
I did want to add something.
Hmm.
When you were talking now, Erin, first thing that I just want to attest to is that one of the best principles that I learned here that's really helping me with teenage children is to not react in anger, you know?
Mm,
So when they do
Mm.
something, because they aren't angels, right? When they do something and I'm angry, I tell them, I don't like what you did, but let's talk about it. I just want to just give me time to cool
mm,
down, that
hmm.
that I don't talk to them in anger. And you know how many times when we do talk about it, and I'm not talking about weeks later or whatever, because I'm never angry for very
No.
long. But when we do talk about it, it's always resolved so quickly because
Mm.
we don't react to each other in anger. And that's one of the principles that I learned here that I really see, but we can talk about that later. I just want to come back to this when you were talking about Adina, when you were saying something, you brought the verse to mind that says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. I don't think that's just valid for when they're older and out of the house. I think the way that we do it now, we give them the wisdom to discern
Mm,
what is going on and what is happening. So if they are going
Mm.
to, church with their dad, they can discern, oh,
hmm.
I don't feel comfortable with this, or I'm comfortable with this, or because we train them up correctly because of him, because of who their Heavenly Father is,
And
because of who
giving
their
them the
Heavenly,
tools. What we're
yes.
doing, do you know,
Mm.
here's another way where children that are not the ideal situation. The ideal is a mother and a father who love one another. The children see that loving home. I just don't want ever to be, I mean, I've been accused of, oh, she likes it this way. I don't like that. I want my children to have both parents, my grandchildren have both parents and loving home. That's the way God created it. But it doesn't always work out that way. And it has nothing to do with what we want. We don't have a choice in it. And so when this other situation, you can take it and our children, these children can benefit. My children
Mhm.
coming from a big family, they are much more able to embrace the world and get along with people because of that. So here's a situation, and some were, oh, we didn't have enough, or we were poor, that sort of thing. But my children grew from that. They benefited. And even children seen in a difficult situation and having to navigate these landmines, right?
Mhm.
Or being
Mhm.
fired at, right? Where you just
Mm.
want to take cover. And but to what kind of an example are we giving to children where they feel like they have to battle it out? And that's what's in our society. They're told stand firm and speak your mind and all of these kinds of things. And it just causes this, well, I think that's why they're sick and they're depressed and they need all these other things to calm them, whether it's drugs or
Yes.
drinking or all these things that they have to hide in because they're not given the tools. But that's what we, as the single mothers who have a husband who knows everything, who has a father replacement that's the best father they could ever have, and giving that kind of wisdom and give them the tools to navigate this and to listen. Your children are watching and they're acting this out now in
Mhm.
their situations when they have to go into these every week or something, taking turns or every other day or even in the evenings, whatever the situation is. But they're being given tools that are lifelong and not just in close relationship, in business, in neighbors. They're using all of these. Our children are blessed above some of the other children that come from a home and that's all they know, all the safety and the ease of it, and they haven't had to deal with things, you know. I think everybody has them, but our children are in that way. And I think looking at it in that way and seeing the advantage and then taking advantage more and looking at it that way and how we can help
Mm,
our children to be blessed double rather than being divide or being half or being coming from a negative situation and at a
Mm,
disadvantage, right? That's being disadvantaged instead
mm,
of it. They have the advantage. They can have the advantage if they have a heavenly Father and you are looking at him as being his bride, then
mm,
they will have the advantage because they'll have that calmness because you can't do that in yourself. You couldn't just stay calm, could you?
mm.
That's not your personality, is it?
no,
No.
no, absolutely.
So, yeah. And so being calm about that, and even if you lose it too, knowing how to say, my gosh, and pray for me.
Mm,
Let's see what,
mm,
being calm about it afterwards or whatever. So I
yes,
think just
mm,
being real about everything and growing with your children, I think it's wonderful.
mm. Yeah, definitely. And that's the nice thing, right? Is we can be real with our children because there are times when I just lose it, and then I apologize because it's not necessary to lose it. So I apologize and I say, you know what, I've overreacted in this. I'm sorry about it. And I think a lot of parents think they shouldn't apologize, but if you've done wrong, then do, apologize to your
Mm.
children. But I'm getting off on the subject now. We're getting off on the subject again. But I do think that in the end, and I think we end our podcasts every time with something like this, is that when the situation comes up for you, where the child goes to two different churches or where you're not fully satisfied, with where they're going when they're with their dad, then again, take it to their heavenly Father, to your husband, because he's the one that has the answers. He'll either give you peace, like he did with Adina, or he'll change the situation for you. Either way, isn't it
He
beautiful the
rarely
way?
changes the situation. Let's get real. He makes us enjoy it where we are. Don't put that out. Did that ever happen to you? That never happened to me. He doesn't. No, I'm not.
Sorry.
Rarely. I'm always shocked if he changes the situation. No, he makes us enjoy it where we are. And then when we don't care anymore
Yes.
or we
Mm,
embrace it, and the sooner you
Mm.
do it, the sooner he does change the situation. That's the
yes.
thing. When we
True
really
enough.
go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this is great. And then it's like, wait, it didn't stay. But that's
Mm,
what he needs us to do. And we can't do that if you don't hang around. That's why,
mm,
hanging around with your husband, starting out with that thankfulness, like we were talking about, the thankfulness therapy, and just
Mm.
thanking him and having and looking at your day and your situation and all these wonderful things and spending time with them all day long. And it's hard if you have children around. It's hard if you have a husband, if you still have a
mm,
husband in the house. It makes it more difficult, but it's not impossible to do.
yes.
It's just that
Yeah.
we need him more. And because we have him more, we're more blessed, even though we don't have what we always dreamed we would have, right? That's
Mm,
what we always
yes.
dreamed. So
Mm,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so
I'm
true.
sorry. I had to set the record straight. I wasn't going to let you get away with that one. No way. I mean, am I being real? Is that what happens to
Yeah,
both of
of
you? I
course
don't
you're
think
being.
so. I don't think so. Does it? Or am I?
And
I don't know. Maybe I'm just the
no,
one.
you're not. You're not. And I've also
You're
found
funny.
that when you embrace the situation and you look back, it doesn't look as bad as it
Mm-mm,
looked in the,
mm-mm.
you get what I'm
Oh,
trying to say.
yes.
Like you would sometimes look back and you would say, why did I even make an issue
Yes.
of that? And that's
Yes.
just him. That's really just him.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
you wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just, when this situation came up, and like I said, I had no idea.
Mm,
I think if it wasn't for my beloved Lord or my heavenly husband, I would have dealt with the situation in all the wrong ways.
mm,
Absolutely. We're
I
human, right?
because
We
in
are
the,
human.
yeah,
Yes.
he, because in that moment when he was talking to me about all of this, I was able to keep calm. And even just afterwards, when they left with, he left with the children, when I did feel upset about it, I knew I could just go to the Lord and just talk to him about it, because either he's going to change the situation or he's going to change me to accept the situation. And he changed me to accept the situation and see
And I think
the
that's
good in
because
it.
we don't understand I've been going through different things and I was asking him about it. Oh, a kind of a health thing. And I thought, why aren't you just healing me? I don't like this, right? I'm like, hurry up. And he said, don't think about that or why it happened or anything. It's just this, what you're going, all these things there, you're going to learn and experience and be a different person than when you entered this, right? It's all these things that you're learning from it and you're experiencing and getting a richness out of life and our relationship with him, but looking at things in a totally different way, that journey that we're on. It's not like hurry up and get me there, right? Enjoy that journey that you're taking and just settle in and enjoy your surroundings, and instead of like just get me out of here, right? Isn't that the first thing? Get this, make this stop, get me out of here, stop this situation, change the situation, instead of like look around, relax, take a breath, remember who you're with, and focus on him. That's one of the big things my husband said. Don't look at the situation, just look at me. Keep your eyes on me. And I said, oh yeah, I can do that. Especially when I get stressed with work. I've got to do this. Shouldn't I do this? And he said, just focus on me. And then all of a sudden, okay, everything's good again. Just focus on me. I'm like, oh right, you're going to take care of this. God, this is good. This is good.
Yeah, I like that. So thank you, Erin. I think this is a good way to end. I want to end with a story because you reminded me of a story I heard about these three men that were like in the woods or whatever, and they had to, probably you've heard the story before, and they had to try to walk in a straight line as much as they could to some or other castle or tower or whatever. And the first person went, and he was able to walk in a straight line, but he veered off quickly. And they asked him, well, what did you look at? He said, well, I looked at what was around me, the trees and things, and made sure that I stayed in between them. But he didn't take a straight path. He veered off the path. And the second one, also, he couldn't take the straight path. He also veered off. He couldn't make a straight line. And they asked him, so what did you look at? He said, well, I looked at my feet and I tried to put one foot in front of the other, but in the end, he also went off. But the last person went into a straight line, right? And they asked him, so how did you get into a straight line? He said, well, there was a light in that tower, and I just kept my eye on the light. And that's how I
That's
walked into,
exactly,
so that's
yes.
exactly
I think we
what
can
I
all draw who the light is and
Yes,
what the light is.
exactly. Yes, yes. So that was the story that I heard, and it actually stayed with me. And I was like, yes, if we just keep our eyes on the prize, I almost want to say, because he isn't
Exactly.
he our
He
prize.
definitely is.
So definitely,
The
yes.
worthless from
So
the precious from the worthless, right? He's
exactly.
precious and everything with him, and everything else is worthless and not worth stressing over, right?
Yes, right.
Not.
Yeah. Definitely. So, ladies, that's a wonderful way for us to end our podcast. Thank you so much for coming and listening to us. It was a wonderful subject. I loved it because it's not something that we've discussed before, not something that we thought of before, and it's definitely, I'm sure, something that some of you are going through, and you're not sure how to deal with it. And in the end, it's just going to him and asking him, and he will help you, like he did with Adina, gave her peace immediately. So definitely, ladies, let's do that, and please come back with your stories, because we would
Yeah,
love to
share
hear
your
from
testimonies in the
how he,
comments and
yes,
things like
yes.
that, or questions that you have that we could maybe talk about. But please share those or anything that came to mind, but especially how are you dealing with this and
Hmm.
what do you
Yes,
want to share? Absolutely.
definitely. Thank you, ladies. Have a wonderful day, and we'll meet again. Bye bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
ladies.